The emergency beacon lit up Council Chamber 7 like a dying star, and honestly, I wished it would just explode already and put us all out of our misery. That MY name is Vex, and I'm what you'd call a mid-level bureaucrat in the Galactic Council's Threat Assessment Division. 20 cycles of monitoring emerging species, filing reports nobody reads, and drinking synthetic caffeine that tastes like engine coolant. But this particular rotation? This was about to become the most unforgettable shift of my pathetically mundane career. "We have a situation," announced High Coordinator Thrin, her 3 eyes blinking in that annoying sequential pattern that meant she was nervous. Good. She should be. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human vessel designated Cargo Runner Delta 9. Standard transport ship. Boring hull design. Nothing impressive. The humans had joined the Council just 4 solar cycles ago, and most species still thought of them as those weird bipeds who insisted on putting cheese on everything. "Pirates," said Thrin, zooming in on 6 Kreshtar raiding ships surrounding the human vessel. "The Bloodfawn clan. They've boarded the cargo ship." I leaned back in my hover seat. "So? Send a patrol. Standard rescue protocol. Why are we watching this live?" Thrin's middle eye twitched. "Because there's a human child on that ship." Oh, I don't know that I'd read the files. I'd seen the warnings from the xenopsychology department. But reading about human protective instincts and actually witnessing them are 2 entirely different things. Like the difference between reading about a supernova and standing in one. The feed switched to internal cameras. 5 humans in the cargo bay, hands raised, surrounded by a dozen Kreshtar pirates. The pirates were your typical thugs, scales, teeth, way too much confidence. Their leader, a massive specimen named Gorth, was waving his plasma rifle around like he was conducting an orchestra of stupidity. "Where's the payment authorization?" Gorth snarled at a human male who appeared to be the ship's captain. Tall, gray-streaked hair, the kind of face that suggested he'd seen things. His name tag read Marcus Vale. "In the bridge terminal," Marcus said calmly. Too calmly. "I'll need to access it personally." Biometric locks. I watched Marcus's eyes. They weren't looking at Gorth. They were tracking something off-screen. Then I saw her. A human child, maybe 8 standard years old, peeking out from behind a cargo container. Dark curly hair. Wide eyes. She was clutching some kind of stuffed toy. "Thrin," I said quietly. "Pull that ship back now. Evacuate the pirates." "I'm serious." "Don't be ridiculous," scoffed Counselor Prath from his designated corner. "The Kintari always thought they knew everything. They're just cargo haulers. Humans aren't even rated as a warrior species. They're Class 3, herbivore descended, minimal threat rating." I pulled up my datapad, fingers trembling slightly. Actually, if you'd read the updated xenobiology reports, humans are apex predators who descended from pursuit hunters. They just happen to also eat plants. Makes them efficient. "Your point," Prath yawned, showing all 16 of his useless decorative teeth. "My point is that classification happened before anyone knew about their offspring protection response." On screen, Gorth noticed the child. His lipless mouth curved into what I assume he thought was a smile. Well, come here, little morsel. Maybe we keep you. Fetch good price from collectors." He took 1 step toward the child. Marcus moved. I'm not even sure moved is the right word. He exploded. That's more accurate. Like someone had compressed a natural disaster into a human-shaped container and suddenly removed the lid. The first pirate didn't even see the punch coming. Marcus grabbed the Kreshtar's rifle barrel, yanked it forward, and drove his forehead into the alien's face with a wet crunch that made half the council chamber flinch. The pirate dropped like his bones had just remembered they were supposed to be liquid. "Lily, close your eyes, baby," Marcus said, his voice somehow still calm as he twisted the rifle from the falling pirate's grip. "Daddy needs to have a conversation with these gentlemen." Then he shot the ceiling lights out. The cargo bay plunged into darkness, except for emergency strips that painted everything in blood-red shadows. "Oh, this is bad," I muttered. "This is so bad." "What's happening?" Thrin demanded. "I can't see anything." The audio feed was still working, though, and what came through those speakers made my spine ridge stand up straight for the first time in cycles. Screaming. Specifically, Kreshtar pirates screaming. Metal clanging. Bodies hitting walls. The distinctive sound of bones breaking. And underneath it all, Marcus Vale's voice, steady as a metronome, counting. 1. A wet thud. 2. Something shattered. 3. More screaming. 4. When the emergency lights flickered back on 30 seconds later, I had to physically prevent myself from emptying my stomachs right there in the council chamber. Marcus stood in the center of the cargo bay, barely breathing hard, surrounded by 12 unconscious pirates. His knuckles were bleeding, his shirt was torn, and his eyes, those terrifying human eyes, were locked on Gorth, who was backing toward the airlock with his rifle shaking in his claws. "You moved toward my daughter," Marcus said, each word falling like a hammer. "You threatened a child. My child. Stay back." Gorth fired wildly. The plasma bolt went wide. Marcus didn't even blink. He walked forward, steady, inevitable. In human culture, Marcus continued conversationally, "We have a saying. You can threaten us. You can rob us. You can even kill us. But you absolutely never, under any circumstances, threaten our children." He reached Gorth in 3 strides, ripped the rifle away like taking candy from, well, a child, and grabbed the pirate by his throat. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said softly. "You're going to leave my ship. You're going to tell everyone you know that human vessels are off limits. And you're going to pray, to whatever gods your species invented, that I never, ever see you again." He threw Gorth backward through the still open airlock door. The pirate tumbled into his own ship's docking tube, and the human crew immediately sealed the hatch. Marcus turned, scooped up his daughter, and held her close. "It's okay, Lily. Daddy's got you. Nobody's going to hurt you." The child buried her face in his shoulder. "You were scary, Daddy." "I know, baby. I'm sorry you had to see that. But sometimes, when people we love are in danger, we have to be a little scary. Just for a minute." Back in the council chamber, silence reigned. Complete, total, absolute silence. Finally, Prath spoke, his voice very small. "What are humans classified as again?" I pulled up the file, reading from the screen with a sort of detached horror. After first contact, initial classification was peaceful traders, class 3 threat level. But there's an addendum here, filed by xenopsychologist Kren. It says, and I quote, "Never threaten a human's family. Recommend species-wide classification upgrade to class 9 threat level when offspring are endangered. Further study required." Class 9, Thren whispered. "That's the same rating as the Korthax war beasts." "Yes," I said flatly. "Except the war beasts can't pilot starships, use tools, or hold grudges for decades." On screen, the Bloodfang ships were retreating at maximum velocity. "Smart." Thren looked at me, all 3 eyes wide. "What do we do with this information?" I saved the footage, marked it priority level alpha, and attached it to a message bound for every council member, every ambassador, every military commander in known space. "We make absolutely certain," I said slowly, "that everyone understands the new rule. You can negotiate with humans. You can trade with humans. You can even fight humans if you're stupid enough. But you never, ever, under any circumstances whatsoever, threaten their children. And if someone does." Prath asked. I replayed the footage of Marcus Vale moving through those pirates like a force of nature, like a predator mode had been activated somewhere in his DNA that turned a simple cargo hauler into something that made my species' ancient nightmares look friendly. "Then may whatever gods exist in this universe have mercy on them," I said. "Because the humans certainly won't." To be continued. Commander Brandt uncrossed his arms. "What about combat scenarios? Military engagements? If humans can do this naturally, shouldn't we be concerned about their military applications?" I'd been dreading this question. "Actually, Commander, we should probably be grateful. Human military forces operate under something they call rules of engagement. Strict protocols. They compartmentalize their aggressive capabilities. But family? That bypasses every cultural control mechanism they've developed over thousands of years. It's older than their civilization. It's survival instinct coded into their very genetics. Evolutionary advantage," Kren added enthusiastically. "Human young are helpless for years, requiring constant protection. Species that didn't develop overwhelming protective responses didn't pass on their genes. Natural selection at its finest." Thren manipulated her datapad, pulling up a new file. "We've received reports from the Bloodfang clan. They've issued a species-wide directive. No Kreshtar vessel is to approach human ships under any circumstances. They're calling humans the screaming apes who fight like demons." "Poetic," I muttered. "It gets better," Thren continued. 3 other pirate organizations have issued similar warnings after seeing the footage. It's gone viral on the underground networks. There's even a betting pool on how long it would take a single human parent to clear a typical raiding party. Current average is 90 seconds. Chancellor Vornis stood, her crystalline structure refracting the room's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. This council needs to make a decision. Do we reclassify humans as a potential threat? Do we impose restrictions? Monitoring protocols. I glanced at the frozen image of Marcus Vale, holding his daughter, blood on his knuckles but gentleness in his eyes. Chancellor, if I may offer an opinion. Proceed. We do nothing. The room erupted in protests, but Vornis raised a hand for silence. Explain your reasoning, Vex. Because reclassifying them as threats makes us the problem, I said carefully. Think about it. Humans responded exactly as any reasonable species would when their offspring were endangered. We didn't witness unprovoked aggression. We witnessed defense. Appropriate, proportionate defense, given the circumstances. If we punish or restrict them for protecting their young, we're essentially declaring that we don't understand the most fundamental aspect of intelligent species survival, which is ensuring the next generation lives to adulthood. Kren's sensory stalks waved in agreement. Vex raises a valid point. Every species in this room has protective instincts toward their young. Humans just happen to be more effective at acting on those instincts than most of us. More effective, Bront said dryly, is an understatement. They're terrifying. Only when you give them a reason to be. I countered. Look, I've been monitoring humans for 4 cycles now. They're cooperative, creative, funny in a strange way, and genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence. They make excellent trade partners, they follow council law, and they contribute positively to galactic society. This incident doesn't change that. It just adds a new understanding. Don't threaten their families, and you'll never have a problem. Vornis considered this for a long moment. And if someone does threaten their families, intentionally or otherwise? I met her gaze steadily. Then they deserve exactly what happened to the Bloodfawn clan. Maybe worse. You're suggesting we do nothing and simply issue a warning. Thren asked. I'm suggesting we update our diplomatic protocols to include a very clear, very prominent advisory about human protective instincts. Make it mandatory reading for anyone who might encounter them. Maybe add it to the standard first contact briefings. Something simple like, humans are peaceful, cooperative, and valuable council members. However, threatening their offspring will result in immediate, overwhelming, and entirely justified defensive response. Proceed with appropriate respect. Ambassador Quern actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. You want to officially document that humans are friendly unless you mess with their kids, at which point they become living weapons. Yes, I said simply. Because that's accurate. Chancellor Vornis stood silent for 30 seconds, which felt like 30 years. Finally, she nodded. Very well. Kren, prepare a comprehensive briefing document. Vex, draft the advisory warning. Commander Bront, have your teams analyze the combat patterns for defensive purposes only, no offensive applications. And someone send a formal commendation to Captain Marcus Vale for his restraint in not actually killing anyone, which frankly shows more control than I would have expected. And the classification? Thren asked. Humans remain Class 3 threat level under standard conditions, Vornis declared. With a special notation. Escalates to Class 9 when dependents are endangered. Let's call it the Vale Protocol. The meeting dispersed, leaving me alone with Kren and the frozen image of Marcus Vale. You think we made the right call? I asked that Kren's stalk swiveled toward me. Absolutely. Besides, can you imagine trying to restrict or control a species that can do what we just witnessed? We'd need enforcement, which would require threatening them, which would trigger exactly the response we're trying to avoid. It's a logical paradox with a very simple solution. Don't threaten their children. Don't threaten their children. Kren agreed that I filed my reports, sent the advisory draft to Vornis, and finally returned to my quarters 16 hours after my shift was supposed to end. As I settled into my rest pod, my datapad chimed one last time. A message from the human embassy to IT was from Marcus Vale himself. Vex, I understand there was some concern about the incident. I want to apologize for any diplomatic complications my actions may have caused, but I want you to know that I would do it again without hesitation. My daughter is everything to me. Thank you for your understanding. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you've got a friend in the human fleet." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "No apologies necessary, Captain. You taught the galaxy an important lesson today. Some things are worth fighting for. Your daughter is lucky to have you. And for what it's worth, I'm glad humans are on our side." I sent the message and powered down my datapad. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, human ships were flying their routes, transporting cargo, exploring new worlds, being their strange, cheese-loving, joke-telling, surprisingly dangerous selves. And now everyone knew. You could work with humans, laugh with humans, trade with humans, even argue with humans. But you absolutely, positively, never ever threatened their children. The galaxy was safer for the knowledge. And honestly, I was safer too, because I'd just made friends with a species that would move entire stars to protect the ones they loved. That seemed like a pretty good alliance to have. 3 standard hours after the incident, my datapad exploded with incoming messages. And when I say exploded, I mean 17 different departments, 43 individual counselors, and 1 very angry Supreme Chancellor were all demanding answers simultaneously. "Vex, get to conference room 12. Thren's voice crackled through my comm unit. "Now, and bring every file we have on human behavioral psychology." I grabbed my materials and hustled down the corridor, passing clusters of council staff who were all watching the footage on their personal devices. Already, word traveled fast when you accidentally recorded proof that a supposedly peaceful species could dismantle a dozen armed pirates in under a minute. Conference room 12 was packed. Every seat filled, standing room only along the walls. I recognized military commanders from 6 different species, intelligence directors, even Ambassador Quarren from the diplomatic corps, who never attended anything unless it was catastrophically important. And there, on the main display, frozen at the moment Marcus Vale's fist connected with that first pirate's face, was the image that was probably going to rewrite our entire understanding of humanity. "Explain," demanded Chancellor Vornis, her crystalline voice structure resonating with barely controlled fury. "Explain how we allowed a species capable of this into the Council without proper threat assessment." I cleared my throat, which is harder than it sounds when you have 3 of them. "With respect, Chancellor, we did assess them. Multiple times. Humans passed every psychological evaluation, every aggression test, every scenario simulation. They're genuinely peaceful under normal circumstances." "Normal circumstances?" Vornis gestured at the screen. "Does that look peaceful to you?" "No, Chancellor. That looks like a parent protecting their offspring, which is apparently very, very different." The xenopsychologist Kren stepped forward, their sensory stalks quivering with what I recognized as academic excitement. Typical. Someone discovers a species can weaponize their parental instincts and Kren treats it like a research opportunity. "If I may," Kren said, manipulating the display to show a series of biological scans. "What we witnessed wasn't random violence. It was a calculated, precise response triggered by a specific threat condition. Notice how Marcus Vale maintained complete verbal control, protected the other crew members, and used exactly the amount of force necessary to neutralize the threats while keeping them alive." "Alive?" Thren blinked her eyes in sequence. "He broke a Kreshtar's spine in 2 places." "Yes, but he didn't kill anyone," Kren emphasized. "Despite having every opportunity and justification under council law regarding self-defense. This suggests extraordinary restraint combined with extraordinary capability." I pulled up another file, one I'd been reviewing during the walkover. There's precedent in human history. Multiple instances where individual humans fought off much larger forces when their families were endangered. One documented case involved a human female who lifted a ground vehicle, which typically weighs 2,000 kilograms, off her trapped child using nothing but muscle contraction and what they call adrenaline. "Adrenaline?" asked Commander Brandt, the Coluvian military liaison. His 3 arms were crossed in what I recognized as defensive posturing, a chemical compound their bodies produce under extreme stress. It temporarily increases strength, pain tolerance, and reaction time by significant factors. Essentially, humans have a built-in combat enhancement system that activates automatically when they perceive their loved ones are in danger. The room fell silent except for the hum of the environmental systems. Then Ambassador Quarren spoke, his voice thoughtful. So what you're telling us is that humans are peaceful until they're not, and we have no way of predicting when that switch flips. Oh, we can predict it, I said, pulling up the footage again and advancing it frame by frame. Watch Marcus Vale's eyes in the 3 seconds before he moves. See that? His pupils dilate. His breathing pattern changes. There's a micro-expression that crosses his face. Kren's team has documented it. They're calling it the pre-activation sequence. Can we detect it? Vornis asked. Build sensors? Create an early warning system. Already working on it, Kren confirmed. But here's the thing, Chancellor. Based on this incident and historical human data, the trigger is consistent and predictable. Humans enter what they call protect mode when their offspring, or sometimes their designated family units, are directly threatened with harm. Don't threaten their children, don't threaten their mates, don't threaten their pack, and you'll never see this behavior.